Good morning. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Ellison Barber, in for Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, pummeled. This morning, millions of Americans waking up to a wintry mess. From heavy rain, flooding, and mudslides in California to snow, wind, freezing temperatures, and power outages across the Northeast. We have team coverage as we track both systems this morning. Drone down, developing this morning, tensions rising between the U.S. and Russia after a collision over international waters. Military officials saying a U.S. military drone was intentionally brought down by a Russian fighter jet.
This incident demonstrates a lack of competence in addition to being unsafe and unprofessional.
Now, Russia is pushing back against the claims, the latest on the confrontation, the investigation, and what it could signal for the war in Ukraine. Also this morning, executive action. President Biden taking on gun violence with a new executive order tightening restrictions for buying and storing guns. More on the move, plus why the president's gun safety push could face big challenges on Capitol Hill. And worries in the workplace. This morning, employees at Meta bracing for another round of layoffs as the tech giant announces plans to cut 13% of its workforce. Now, those mass layoffs causing concern across the tech industry and beyond. We'll explore how the threat of losing a job could impact us even after the workday ends. It's good to be with you this morning.
Good to have you with us. Busy morning.
Yes.
We got tech, we got weather, we got politics.
Absolutely. But we will begin this morning with that severe weather on opposite ends of the country.
In Northern California, heavy rains forced thousands to evacuate their homes yesterday. The storm system fueled by an atmospheric river. The Los Angeles area is bracing for heavy flooding and landslides, while those living in the Sierra Mountains have another round of snow in store today. And here in the Northeast, a major nor'easter pummeled states from New York to Maine. Some places getting more than 2 feet of snow. But the story this morning is the power outages it caused. An estimated 250,000 customers are without power this morning as cleanup crews begin clearing out the iced over roads and power lines. Meteorologist Angie Lassman is standing by with the forecast. But first, NBC News correspondent Antonia Hilton is in Worcester, Massachusetts again for us this morning. So, Antonia, what are conditions looking like where you are, and how does that compare to the rest of the state?
Good morning, Joe. Look, things are much calmer. The snow slowed considerably last night. I think this time yesterday I was talking to you with snow piling up on my hat and on my shoulders. Of course, that's not the case right now, but there are still some heavy wind gusts, and that's what has officials still concerned here, because as snow piles up on trees, on roofs, that can cause issues as the wind continues to blow through central and other parts of Massachusetts today. Really, the challenge left for people is to get the cleanup underway so that people can get back to work, get back into schools. We saw about a foot, about 13 inches of snow here, but in other parts of central Mass and in the Berkshires, they got about 30 inches. And so there's a major cleanup, and this was the heavy, sticky snow that's really hard to get your average snowblower through. A guy has been working behind me all morning doing his best to clean up here, and people have been doing that in their walkways. School here in Worcester is still delayed by 2 hours to give families some time to dig out and make sure that they can get on their morning commutes or get to school safely, Joe.
So families are focused on digging out now that the worst of the storm has passed. What is it officials there are most focused on?
Well, they're focused on the wind gusts, making sure that things are safe out on the streets, that they've cleared some of the trees that were knocked over yesterday, and that they're restoring power. You mentioned about 250,000 people lost power just in Massachusetts. Over 60,000 people lost power. Some of those folks are already back online, and thankfully this is an area where people often have a backup generator or a neighbor who has a backup generator. So we didn't see major crises here yesterday, but they're keeping an eye on all of that and trying to make sure that those folks get back up to speed today and are able to get back out there. You know, the biggest issue is just making sure that some of these sidewalks, these roads, I'm in the downtown area, which is normally really busy. You'll remember yesterday it was dead. They want to make sure that as people return to work, it's safe out on the street here.
You mentioned some school delays. Delays, not cancellations. Is the theory, is the feeling that people will be able to get back to work and school at some point today?
That's the hope. School is going to start around 10 a.m. today. They feel pretty secure that they'll be able to make sure those hazardous conditions are out of the way in just a couple hours. But they really wanted that extra time, that extra safety. keep some of the school buses, some of the parents in their cars off the road just for a little while. You know, the snow and most of the ice is up off of the street right now, but it really is that potential still for trees to knock over, some of the heavy snow to fall off roofs or lamp posts or power lines that they really want to make sure to get out of the way and make sure people can really just get back to their normal routine today.
It's a bit of a road bump for hardy New Englanders. All right, Antonia Hilton, thank you so much for your reporting. Appreciate it.
For more on these storms on both coasts, let's bring in meteorologist Angie Lassman.
Hey, Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. We're going to eventually say goodbye to that nor'easter as it continues to pull away and takes most of the impacts with it. But yes, Antonia's right. We'll still deal with the gusty conditions today and still some lingering snow showers across parts of New England. Nothing quite as impressive as what we dealt with yesterday, though. We are not done, however, with that system that has been fueling the flooding in parts of California for days now. Today is another day where Southern California mainly will be inundated with more rain. You see the radar showing all of that heavy rain working from Santa Barbara all the way into parts of San Diego. It's Southern California that's in the focus of that additional rainfall through the day today. We're eventually going to see this wrap up as that system starts to move to the east, but we still do have many people under these flood alerts as we continue to see melting snow and that additional rainfall. So be careful of that, especially if you're in the Southern California region through the day today. Now, I mentioned the system's going to move east. It is, and we're going to add on some snowfall for parts of the Rockies, and we'll also add a little bit of rain for parts of the Southwest. Nothing quite as impressive as what we've seen from this system so far, but that's not the end of the story. We'll eventually see as we get into parts of Thursday, the system track to the east, bringing snow and strong winds to parts of the upper Midwest, and not to mention the potential for some strong to even severe storms stretching through parts of the Southeast. We're going to see large hail possible for places like Dallas, South Oklahoma, North Texas, all included in that elevated, or rather enhanced risk of severe storms as we get into tomorrow afternoon, something that you'll want to pay attention to if you live in that area. The system continues to move to the east as we get into Friday, wrapping up our work day, or our work week rather, with rain stretched from the northeast all the way down to the Gulf Coast. This isn't going to be quite as impressive as what we'll deal with as far as the heavy rain is concerned for parts of the southern plains and the southeast as we go through tomorrow, but still, it'll be impactful for folks along the East Coast for Friday. When we talk about the severe weather, again, I mentioned Dallas, Texarkana also included in this, Houston, San Antonio, you have a slight risk too for mainly the hail and the wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour, but also we're not going to rule out a couple of tornadoes through the afternoon hours. There's the heavy rain that this system brings from Atlanta to Houston and up to Little Rock, maybe an inch, maybe isolated amounts higher than that, so we will watch for some flooding concerns for Thursday and into Friday. And we can't talk about what's going on across the country without talking about the frigid air left in place by that departing nor'easter. So it's long gone, but behind it, those winds are quite strong, as we know, and they're ushering in some really chilly conditions for the southeast. 35 million people are waking up to freeze alerts, and this isn't just this morning that we'll see this. This is also into tomorrow morning that you'll want to watch for this. Really problematic because we know how warm it's been across this area for weeks now, guys, and we know that the blooms are out, agriculture issues. It's just, we're all confused with the weather.
And the flowers are too right now.
Exactly. Yes, my goodness. Thank you so much for that, Angie. We appreciate it.
More fallout this morning surrounding the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank.
Federal investigators are now looking into the actions of bank executives before the collapse. NBC News tech correspondent Jake Ward has the story.
As investors, customers, and regulators pick up the pieces after the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, now new lawsuits and an investigation seek to go inside the actions of executives in the days and weeks before it all happened.
Silicon Valley Bank now under federal investigation. NBC News confirming with multiple sources the Department of Justice, along with the Securities and Exchange Commission, have launched probes looking at, among other things, stock sales made by company executives before the bank collapsed. This as calls grow in Washington for renewed bank regulation and accountability.
I do think that certainly the profits from the sales by the owner should be clawed back because we're going to have to be raising fees on banks in order to pay for the uninsured depositors at this bank and other banks.
Despite several smaller regional banks bouncing back in the stock market, Moody's announced a downgraded outlook for the U.S. banking sector as a whole. How healthy are other small institutions like Silicon Valley Bank? Analysts say we will not know the fundamentals until a Federal Reserve report provides a look at combined balance sheets 2 weeks from Friday.
The stocks are absolutely not a reliable indicator. In 2 weeks, we'll know if there's a big outflow or not. but that's the next kind of scheduled data point that we'll get.
Just before its collapse, Silicon Valley Bank blamed its troubles on elevated cash burn from its mostly tech-focused clients. Now, the concern is in part whether other regional banks are exposed to similar risk. The pullback in the tech sector continued with Facebook parent company Meta's announcement it would eliminate 15,000 jobs following 11,000 layoffs at the company in November.
On top of all this, we've now learned inflation has just fallen to 6%. That makes for a complicated economic picture as the Federal Reserve prepares to meet next week. Many economists are now asking if the Fed will hit pause on further rate increases. Back to you.
All right, Jake, thank you.
Tensions are on the rise again between the United States and Russia after U.S. spy drone crashed following an encounter with a Russian fighter jet. The incident took place over the Black Sea in Eastern Europe. The U.S. military says a Russian warplane clipped one of its Reaper drones, forcing the U.S. to bring it down. Washington later summoned the Russian ambassador to discuss the incident. The Pentagon criticized Russia for how the intercept occurred.
Several times before the collision, the Su-27s dumped fuel on and flew in front of the MQ-9 in a reckless and unprofessional manner. This incident demonstrates a lack of competence in addition to being unsafe and unprofessional.
NBC News global security reporter Dan DeLuce joins us now for more on this. Dan, the National Security Council's John Kirby says these sorts of aerial intercepts are not uncommon, but this one was noteworthy, he says, because of the way it took place. Tell us more about the U.S.'s version of events here, and what exactly are these Reaper drones?
That's right. So the Pentagon's version of this is that this was a relatively routine mission for this intelligence gathering drone, right? It's a very slow moving plane with a propeller at the tail. It was used a lot in Afghanistan and Iraq, and it's really designed to pick up imagery and intelligence flying over an area. It also can be armed with missiles, but the U.S. is suggesting this was on a kind of intelligence mission. And instead of a kind of routine intercept, the U.S. is saying that the Russian fighter jets flew in this very unsafe manner and clipped the propeller of this drone, and they had to crash the drone into the Black Sea. And they're saying that this was all basically the fault of the Russians, and Russia has a different version of events.
Tell us a little bit about that. What is Russia saying took place here?
Right. So the Russian ambassador was summoned to the State Department, and there was a very strong protest conveyed by the U.S. But the Russians are saying that this was a provocative act, that it was near Russian territory, and that the drone somehow didn't have a transponder on. Here's what the Russian ambassador had to say.
This drone can carry a few bombs. You see that what will be reaction of United States if you see such Russian drone very close, for example, to San Francisco or New York? What will be reaction of United States? We don't want any confrontation between the United States and Russian Federation. We are in favor of pragmatic relations for the interest of the people of the United States and Russian Federation.
So noteworthy there that he says the Russians don't want a confrontation. And I think the tone from the administration here in Washington has also been pretty restrained. I think everyone sees there's very high stakes here, and it's a reminder of just how dangerous the situation is with so many military assets all operating in close proximity.
Dan, do we know where this drone, or at least what's left of it, is right now? Has the U.S. been able to retrieve it? Is it in Russian custody? And if the Russians have it, how big of a national security threat might that pose?
Well, first, that's a key question, and the Pentagon didn't give any update yesterday. But defense officials did tell NBC News that they've essentially wiped clean the software and the equipment on that drone so that any data or sensitive information is now no longer available. It's highly unlikely that the U.S. will be able to recover this. This crashed, near Russian naval ships that patrol the Black Sea and near Russian-controlled territory in Ukraine and the Crimean Peninsula. So it's probably likely the Russians will get a hold of it before the U.S. does.
All right, Dan DeLuce, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
The Biden administration is taking new steps to try to address gun violence. The president signed an executive order yesterday in Monterey Park, California. That was the site of a mass shooting just 2 months ago where a gunman killed 11 people during a Lunar New Year celebration. The new order signed by the president is designed to increase background checks for the purchase of guns. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Kristen Welker joins us now from the White House. Kristen, good morning. So first of all, can you break down exactly what this executive order does and what the president's saying about it?
Hi, Joe. Well, it is good to be with you. President Biden announcing that new executive order in really somber remarks in Monterey Park yesterday. The order does a couple of things. The primary goal is to make sure that authorities are fully implementing that bipartisan gun law that passed last year. So it calls for safe storage of firearms. It encourages better ballistics tracing. And the crux of the order directs the Attorney General to increase the use of background checks for gun buyers. It's a real effort, the president says, to get as close as possible to universal background checks. Take a listen to what the president had to say yesterday.
My executive order directs my Attorney General to take every lawful action possible to move us as close as we can to universal background checks without new legislation. It's just common sense to check whether someone is a felon, a domestic abuser, before they buy a gun.
Now, the key to what the president said is without new legislation, right? Because it's important to note that this is an executive order, Joe, so it could be undone by a future president or a court challenge. So any real change does have to occur in Congress. We've seen the president recently step up his calls for more gun laws, including banning assault weapons. That is a long-held issue that he has had. But the president and Democrats just don't have enough votes to pass that in Congress. Now, of course, all of this comes as the president is inching closer to that expected announcement that he's running for re-election in 2024. So, Joe, this is a real preview of things to come on the campaign trail.
You know, and Kristen, the president did go after the gun industry a bit here. It's an industry that victims of gun violence have long expressed frustrations over. Let's listen to a little of what he had to say.
Executive order ramps up our efforts to hold the gun industry accountable. It's the only outfit you can't sue these days. It does that by calling out for an independent government study that analyzes and exposes how gun manufacturers aggressively market firearms to civilians, especially minors, including by using military imagery.
So, Kristen, this is such a divisive issue, and we have a divided Congress. So how have the president's comments been received?
Well, divided Congress and the NRA also already, not surprisingly, Joe, forcefully pushing back against the president's speech. Let me tell you their reaction. They tweeted in part yesterday, quote, crimes are committed by criminals. Until President Biden and his allies decide to go after violent criminals, violence will continue to spiral out of control. Now, the White House rejects that, arguing that, look, the president has proposed more funding for police departments for fighting criminals. Still, to your initial point, congressional Republicans have made similar points as the NRA, with many arguing it's not more gun laws that are needed, but rather more funds for things like mental health. All of this, Joe, all of it underscoring why this issue of guns and gun laws is one of the most intractable and divisive here in Washington.
And quickly, Kristen, I mean, the president's been mostly aligned with his allies on this issue, but we have seen him break from them on some other issues. Can you talk about that?
This is really notable, Joe. The president has broken with progressives on some really hot-button issues recently, including, just to tick through a few things, signing legislation to overturn a D.C. crime bill that would have relaxed some penalties, green-lighting a major oil drilling project in Alaska, and the administration also considering reviving family detentions for migrants. Now, if he made that move, that would just enrage some progressive allies. Of course, though, big picture here, the broader context is the president is eyeing independent, moderate voters as he prepares for that likely run for re-election. Yesterday on Meet the Press Now, I had the chance to speak with progressive Congressman Jamal Bowman of New York, and I asked him about his perspective on the president. Take a listen. Do you believe that the president is the strongest person to represent progressives in 2024?
That's a tough question because, again, we would like to see him go further on many issues. However,
are you saying he should be primaried, Congressman?
No, I'm not saying that.
Congressman went on to say he does want to see the president fight for progressive principles. Now, the strategy could be a risky one because in addition to independents and moderates, the president needs progressives, especially those young voters, to turn out in force if he wants to win re-election, Joe.
All right, Kristen Welker at the White House. Kristen, thank you.
The future of a medical abortion is on shaky ground. A Texas judge is set to hold a hearing this morning on a lawsuit seeking to reverse the FDA's approval of the pill mifepristone nationwide. The agency says around 5.6 million people in the U.S. have used the drug for a medical termination of a pregnancy. We are joined now by Dean and James E. Beasley Professor of Law at Temple University, Rachel Robuchet, joining us this morning to kind of break down everything going on here. Thank you so much for joining us, Rachel. Let's just start with what exactly is going on here. What are the allegations that led up to this lawsuit, and what would happen if this medication is actually halted?
So the lawsuit's really about the FDA's approval of, as you said, mifepristone, the first drug in a medication abortion. And plaintiffs are alleging that 23 years ago, in 2000, when the FDA first approved the drug, it did so outside of its regulatory authority. They're also saying that when the FDA lifted a restriction on the drug, that people pick up the pills at a healthcare facility, that it also didn't have the power to do that. So what's at stake are plaintiffs asking this court to unapprove a drug that's been approved for a couple of decades.
So when we're talking about medical abortion, if I'm not mistaken, you're really talking about two different types of medication, right? Mifepristone and then misoprostol, which then comes in second after that. So explain to us kind of exactly what we mean by a medical abortion, and if this one particular, this first medication that people take, if this is no longer available, could people still have it with this other one, or do they have to go hand in hand?
Yeah, they can. In fact, lots of people all over the world just use misoprostol. So that it's two drugs. Mifepristone is taken first and misoprostol is taken second, 24 to 48 hours after. But misoprostol can also end a pregnancy, and it is not subject to the same FDA rules that mifepristone is. So many people are talking about if mifepristone is not available on the market, people will start using the second drug only.
Could there be risks associated with that?
You know, it's very safe. Mifepristone is very safe as well. There are slightly higher risks, but recent research shows that misoprostol is very effective in ending a pregnancy before 12 to 13 weeks of pregnancy. Risk increases if you use it later in pregnancy, but in the first trimester, it's very safe.
So what should people who are maybe in a position where they need to have a medical abortion, what should they be watching for in today's hearing, and what are you watching for?
So, you know, the reporters aren't allowed in the hearing today. So we'll be all watching after the hearing to hear what's happened. But what I'm watching for are arguments around the harm that a ruling unapproving mifepristone might cause. I'm waiting to hear what questions the judge has asked about the effects of such a ruling, not just the effects on people's access to medication abortion, but I'm interested to hear what the court wants to know about the FDA's power. It's really unheard of to think of a federal court telling a federal agency that 23 years ago, it didn't have the statutory power to approve a drug when that's the whole purpose of the agency. So, you know, a lot's on the line.
All right. And this is a Trump-appointed judge who's overseeing this. And I know some abortion rights advocates had concerns about some past opinions, articles he had written. Thank you for being here. We will keep an eye on it. Rachel Robuchet, we appreciate your time.
Coming up, the head of the FAA reassuring travelers after a series of near collisions.
Is flying safe right now?
Lester, I can say to you, to your audience, to the American people, that flying is absolutely safe.
Up next, more of his exclusive interview with Lester Holt, plus the Air Safety Summit getting underway today. Stay with us. This is Morning News Now.
Welcome back. This morning, there are concerning questions about air safety that have put some flyers on edge.
In an exclusive interview, Nightly News anchor Lester Holt spoke with the acting head of the FAA, Billy Nolen, about a string of near collisions on runways. It comes as the agency is set to hold an air safety summit later today.
At airports across the country, alarms are being raised over dangerous near misses. From the runway at Austin Bergstrom Airport, where a controller cleared a FedEx 767 cargo jet to land on the same runway that a Southwest 737 full of passengers was taking off from, just 75 feet from disaster.
Southwest aboard, FedEx is on the go.
To an unsettling close call at Boston's Logan Airport, where a Learjet pilot took off without clearance as a JetBlue flight was landing on a crossing runway. And now NBC News has learned of another near disaster last week at Reagan National, where a regional jet pilot rolled in front of a departing United Airbus jet.
Oh, United 2003, Kansas takeoff clearance. We're boarding takeoff, United 2003.
Some of the headlines are downright scary. Is flying safe right now?
Lester, I can say to you, to your audience, to the American people, that flying is absolutely safe. We have the safest, most complex system in the world. We work at it every day, and it is absolutely safe.
Why is this summit so important right now?
We've had these events over the past few weeks that gives us a moment to say, let's stop, let's reflect, let's ask ourselves the question, are we missing anything? Is there anything that we should be doing different? And remind ourselves always, always that we can never become complacent and never take this incredible safety record for granted.
Are we seeing more of these, or is this what you would describe as a cluster?
I would describe it as a cluster. We've seen over this last few months more than you'd expect to see. Maybe you have an average of 1 or 2 per month.
I will kill every man on this plane.
And then there are the concerns about what's happening on board.
The FAA has zero tolerance for unruly behavior. And we will indeed use every tool, every resource at our disposal where someone interferes with a cabin or cockpit crew member. We will go for civil penalties and federal prosecution where warranted. My suggestion to you is to stay home, because if you act up in flight, we're going to come after you.
With airports full for spring break and the summer travel season not far away, Nolan insists the FAA is prepared as they seek to avoid a repeat of last summer's meltdown.
Flying has come back with a vengeance, so to speak. Our goal is to make sure that we're proactive and where we can be, to be as predictive as we can be to make sure that our demand matches up.
Our thanks to Lester Holt for that report. At today's summit, the NTSB plans to renew its calls for longer cockpit voice recordings. It wants so-called black boxes to capture 25 hours of data. Right now, they only keep 2 hours before the recordings are overwritten.
Taking you around the world this morning, starting with unrest in Pakistan as police try to arrest the former prime minister.
NBC News foreign correspondent Molly Hunter joins us now with more. Good morning, Molly.
Allison, Joe, good morning to both of you. Great to be with you. As Joe said, we will start in Pakistan, where protests are spreading across the country, and today they are escalating right outside the house of the former prime minister. There was an unsuccessful attempt to arrest the now opposition leader, Imran Khan, last night. His supporters say it is politically motivated, and today his supporters are throwing stones at police. The police are trying to control the crowds using tear gas and water cannons. Moving to Honduras, President Castro has tweeted that she intends to establish official relations with China, thus ending her country's ties with Taiwan, further isolating the island on the world stage. Now, China does not allow countries that they are allied with and they have official diplomatic relations with to also have official ties with Taiwan. And finally, over in my neck of the woods, there is upstairs-downstairs drama at the real-life Downton Abbey. It's called Highclere Castle in southern England. And if you had your dream set on getting married there, well, the owners have said that is no longer a possibility. The reason, since Brexit, they say, they have not been able to fill staffing shortages left by European workers. And this is a problem, you guys, I think beloved Carson, of course, the butler on that show, would have been able to solve. I'll send it back to you.
Or at the very least, the Dowager would have had a witty response to it all. So.
Yes.
Thank you, Molly. Appreciate it.
Coming up, a troubling trend, the warning about a powerful new street drug not meant to be taken by humans and how it's devastating one major city.
Plus, food for the brain. We have yet another good reason for you to eat those greens. Next on Morning News Now.
Welcome back now to an alarming look at the rise of a new street drug that's wreaking havoc in one major U.S. city. NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns has the story, and we want to caution you. Some of the images you're about to see are disturbing.
The Kensington neighborhood of Philadelphia for decades has been an epicenter of the nation's drug crisis, according to the Department of Justice.
This is the infamous K&A.
But the supply in the largest open-air drug market on the eastern seaboard has become even more dangerous, evolving from heroin to the more potent fentanyl. And now those drugs laced with xylazine, a large animal sedative commonly referred to as trank.
You're not screaming like before. That's a plus sign.
The city is rolling out wound treatment vans to combat the effects of trank. Believed to prolong the effects of fentanyl, it also causes deep wound infections on the user's body, eroding away human flesh and sometimes leading to amputation of infected limbs.
He comes every day. Today he will take care of this leg.
Nurse Mercy Varghese says what we saw here was mild.
Some of them come with both hands from here to here.
Raquel Fetzer is in recovery from heroin addiction. Sober since 2016, she runs the mobile wound care program.
When you were using compared to what you see now, how different is it?
It's very, very different. A bag of heroin would hold me 6 to 8 hours. Now people are going into withdrawal within 2 to 3 hours.
Many users don't want trank, but
there is no fentanyl that doesn't have trank in it.
Traveling through Kensington, we met Eric Taylor when he asked police for treatment for his wounds.
When you're in pain, it makes you more likely to use because you want to relieve the pain.
2021 was a record year for overdose deaths in Philadelphia. That same year, 90% of opioid samples that the health department tested from the street supply contained xylazine.
How significant of an issue is xylazine right now?
I would say it's probably our biggest challenge right now.
Doctors are finding conventional wound care treatments are not effective and don't know how to treat the dependence on trank.
We don't have a medical detoxification best practice yet in place for it because, again, it wasn't something meant for human consumption.
The FDA has taken action to restrict the unlawful entry of xylazine into the country, citing concern about the increasing prevalence of xylazine mixed with illicit drugs.
How much should people be sounding the alarm right now?
I think everybody should absolutely be sounding the alarm. The movement, similar to what we saw with fentanyl, is that it will be in every other substance.
A deadly cycle turning deadlier.
Our thanks to Dasha Burns for that reporting. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, the life-saving overdose medication Narcan might not actually be able to resuscitate someone who is using trank, since trank is not actually an opioid.
Some major relief is on the way for those in need of insulin. Novo Nordisk will lower the U.S. list price of some of its insulin products by up to 75%. The Danish drug maker says the change, which will take effect on January 1st, 2024, the move follows a similar change by Eli Lilly, which announced this month that it will lower the list price for several of its products by 70% later this year. But Eli Lilly also went a step further, immediately capping the out-of-pocket cost of all its insulin products at $35 a month. Time for your weekly checkup. One popular diet may have new benefits to improve brain and heart health.
Plus, we have tips on how to lower the risk of gestational diabetes.
NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar joins us now with more. Let's start with this one. The Mediterranean diet, consistently named one of, if not the best overall diet. And now there's research that says it may lower your risk of dementia. This is out of the UK. So remind us, what exactly is the diet? How much does it help?
So we reported on this yesterday on the Today Show. This is pretty fascinating. We have never been able to link a specific diet to a reduced risk of dementia, but in this study they actually did. They followed over 60,000 seniors for about 10 years, and they found that people who strictly followed a Mediterranean diet had a decreased risk of dementia by about 23%. And in a separate article, if you're a woman listening to this, eating a Mediterranean diet also lowered your risk for heart disease by about 25%. So I think it's easy, and I recommend this diet, by the way, to all of my patients. And I say, go think plant-based, think whole food. So you're thinking whole grains, seeds, nuts, legumes, fresh vegetables, and fruit. And the things you want to stay away from, and by the way, these are our doctor's orders, are the red meat, sweets. You don't want to have, obviously, processed foods and things like that, things like animal fat and a lot of excess dairy you want to kind of stay away from. It's called the Mediterranean diet. We know where in the world it comes from. These individuals have significantly lower risks of heart disease and stuff than we do in our Western diet.
So we should pay attention.
Yes, yes.
So there's more research related to gestational diabetes that's out right now. Coming on and finding out you have diabetes while pregnant, not necessarily uncommon, but it has been rising across the globe, right? What are we learning?
Yeah, it has been rising, and it's significant because a woman who has gestational diabetes has a 10-time greater risk of developing type 2 diabetes herself, and her offspring also has risks of obesity as well as hypertension. So what this study was looking at is how much light exposure in the 3 hours before you go to bed, could that impact your risk of gestational diabetes? And I read this and I was like, what does light have to do with diabetes? So apparently the more light exposure you have can sort of trigger that fight or flight response that we have, and that high heart rate and everything, instead of your heart rate going down, can impact your glucose metabolism. What lights are we talking about? We're talking about smartphones, so doctor's orders, right? The things that you want to do, you want to dim your lights a couple of hours before bedtime, because it's also your ambient light, it's your night table, everything. And your devices, computers. Remember, blue starts with a B, is bad. Your blue light is bad. You have to change that setting on your smartphone, especially if you're looking on your phone, because a lot of us do that. We read before we go to sleep at night. That can definitely mitigate that risk.
All right, quickly, let's hit this
Yes.
last one here. Yogis may have the key to longer life. A review of 33 studies shows yoga can help elderly people get stronger, help them live longer. Why?
Yeah, so frailty is a big problem. About 50% of people over the age of 80 are frail. And what that means is that they're weak and they move slowly, they get exhausted more easily. Yoga can improve walking speed, it can improve endurance, and it can improve your leg strength. Think about a senior being able to get up and be independent, to go from seated to standing, for example. The experts here recommend doing about 2 to 3 one-hour sessions per week, and it's never too late to start. These benefits can even be seen if you start at a late. You don't need to be a yogi your whole life. And by the way, for any yogis out there, they recommended maybe Iyengar as opposed to Ashtanga. Could you imagine a senior doing? And there's a lot of them out there who do it. I've taken classes. Listen, they've put me to shame, some older folks. But anyway, that's the one, because it really using props and things like that.
There are easier
really
yogas
helpful.
out there, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Dr. Natalie Azar, appreciate it. Thank you so much. Coming up in Morning News now, more workplace worries as Meta announces another round of mass layoffs.
When we come back, more on that announcement, plus how the threat of losing a job could have an impact on your mental health.
Welcome back. This morning, the tech world is reeling from the shock waves of another massive round of layoffs. Facebook's parent company, Meta, announced that it will lay off another 10,000 workers as it looks to cut costs in what CEO Mark Zuckerberg calls the company's year of efficiency. As part of the announcement, Meta says it also plans to close an additional 5,000 open roles that have not yet been filled. All this comes after the company announced 11,000 layoffs back in November.
We've seen a number of big companies announce massive layoffs like this recently, and whether you work in the tech sector or not, hearing about job cuts like this can make you worry about your own job security. So for more, we're joined by chief economist at ZipRecruiter, Julia Pollack, and licensed marriage and family therapist and CEO of George Talks, Dr. George James. Thank you both for being here. Julia, we'll start with you. ZipRecruiter actually conducted a survey of more than 2,000 Americans who were laid off. Tell us what that survey found.
So how you do in a layoff depends very much on the macroeconomic climate in which you're laid off. And past research has shown that when the unemployment rate is above 8%, workers on average can lose up to 3 years of their pre-layoff earnings when they're laid off. One, because they're unemployed for so long, and two, because when they take a job, they're forced to take a job that pays less. But that's not the world we're in right now. Right now, the unemployment rate is 3.6%. There are still almost 2 jobs for every unemployed worker. And so many people who are being laid off are being pleasantly surprised. We laid off workers who were laid off in December and January. By the end of the month, by the end of January, 55% had a new job. 42% of them had found a job that paid more than their old job. 37% found a job that paid the same. Only 21% took a pay cut. And so, what I would tell unemployed workers right now and people being laid off is that rather than being too concerned and worried, be optimistic and understand that you could actually come out ahead. Perhaps this layoff will push you to do what you should have been doing all along if you weren't fulfilled in your job, which is to go out there on ZipRecruiter and see what your market worth is and discover your dream job.
That optimism can be good, but Dr. James, obviously the stress of being laid off or even just the stress of impending layoffs can really do a number on your mental health, especially for workers who've already been feeling isolated because they've been working from home a good deal over the last 3 years. How should we deal with that stress?
Yeah, Joe, to your point, a lot of people have already been feeling burnt out and overwhelmed. And when you hear about layoffs, it does increase the level of anxiety and stress that people experience. And if they are laid off, it can actually push that a little further, even increasing like the stigma of that I was laid off or that this is something I have to deal with. A lot of people can actually use this time, as was stated earlier, not only to find a new job, but sometimes to pivot, to figure out what is it that you really want to do, to spend some time with family, and also maybe to work on some self-care to rejuvenate yourself so that you are your best self going forward.
And Julia, layoffs in 2022 actually hit a record low, but at the same time, you have the Fed Reserve Board projecting that unemployment will rise to more than 4.5% this year. I mean, that seems to suggest that there are going to be a lot of job losses coming down the pike. Is this something people should be worried about?
So the Fed's projections are that almost 2 million workers could lose their jobs this year. But something to know is that at any time in the United States, between about 4 million and 7 million workers are hired each month. And so a net loss of 2 million jobs needs to be put in context there. That doesn't mean that your individual chances and opportunities are necessarily diminished that much. I agree very much with what the previous speaker said about how there is a fantastic opportunity here to pivot and to switch careers. About 50% of the workers in our survey actually did take this opportunity to move into new industries and new occupations.
So, Dr. James, the ZipRecruiter survey also found that more people affected by layoffs are sharing their stories online, sharing those stories publicly. But that's still the exception rather than the rule because there is such a stigma. So how can we help fight that stigma of being laid off?
You know, like any stigma, the more that we share and put our thoughts out there, what we talk to our friends, family members, social media, the more that we're able to embrace that we're not alone, that there's more people that are out there, and actually that to see what can we benefit from this situation. It might be hard and overwhelming. It might also increase your anxiety, but there are ways that you can get help. You can talk to somebody. You can go talk to a ZipRecruiter. You can find ways to make this work for you, and it doesn't have to be negative. So lean into it, and that might be helpful.
All right, Julia Pollack and Dr. George James, thank you both for joining us. Important conversation about this topic.
To some financial news now. After the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank, the Federal Reserve is now taking another look at how it treats mid-sized banks.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Joe Ellison, good morning. That's right. The Federal Reserve is considering tougher rules for mid-sized banks in the wake of the failure of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. The Wall Street Journal reports that could potentially mean expanding existing restrictions that currently only impact larger Wall Street firms. These would include stronger regulations related to how much capital banks must hold and beefing up annual stress tests that measure a bank's ability to weather a hypothetical recession. The rules could target firms with between 100 and $250 billion in assets, which would include about 24 banks, such as Regions Financial and Fifth Third Bank. China's post-zero COVID year is getting off to a disappointing start. Retail sales rising more than 3% in January and February, but that was just in line with expectations, and sales of big-ticket items such as cars and appliances declined. Investment in the country's real estate sector fell further after dropping 10% last year. The economic reports combine both months to avoid any distortions from the Lunar New Year, which is a big travel period that can fall in either January or February. A Chicago man has filed a class action lawsuit against Buffalo Wild Wings, accusing the chain of deceptive advertising. He says the restaurant's boneless chicken wings are made from chicken breast meat instead of deboned chicken wings. Now, it's unclear how much he's asking for in damages. When asked for comment, Buffalo Wild Wings referenced a post on its Twitter account saying, "It's true. Our boneless wings are all white meat chicken." It also says our buffalo wings are 0% buffalo, guys.
I mean, if you
How
took
about that?
If you took the bone out of the wing, that would obviously not be great.
No,
I mean, it's pretty clear that it's like not a wing.
I feel like this is the new great debate of, is a hot dog a sandwich, but like
Oh
the
my
chicken
gosh.
version,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
could get on board with it. I mean, no opinion on the lawsuit, but just generally speaking, I'd rather have white meat too. But you know.
Me too. I'm all for it.
All right, Silvana, thank you so much.
Sure
We
thing.
appreciate it. And coming up, young, single, and ready for love.
When we come back, the trends we're tracking when it comes to Gen Zers and online dating. You're watching Morning News now. Welcome back. It looks like we'll be returning to Oz a little sooner than expected. The release date for the big screen adaptation of the Broadway hit Wicked was just moved up from Christmas to November 27th, 2024. That's next year. Director John M. Chu tweeted, "We've decided to get it to you a little earlier than expected. Wicked is going to be released in 2 parts and stars Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande as Elphaba and Glinda, recounting the events before The Wizard of Oz." I would say mark your calendars, but no one plans that far ahead.
No, not that far ahead, but I will watch it
But
as
you
soon
will
as I
see it.
can.
I know, and splitting it up into 2, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So
I wonder if you hold your people for part 2, or if people just like forget. You think
100%.
for sure.
Do you know have you met Wicked fans?
I mean, yes, I have
They
seen
will
it.
also
It's
go
great.
400
I was going to say I've been
times.
with someone who has been multiple times.
There
so
you
yes,
go.
they're very
All right,
impressive.
looking forward to that. All right, Gen Z might be the first generation to come of age in a world where dating apps dominate, but surveys show that many young people feel frustrated with that.
Yeah, so how are the apps influencing the way Gen Z dates? What kind of apps are they most likely to use? And what does the future hold?
For more on this, we are joined by Sophie Barron. She is the founder and CEO of the Gen Z platform, The Conversationalist, and she's just taken a deep dive into this issue for an upcoming episode of her show. Always good to have you with us, Sophie. Thanks so much for joining us. I mean, many in Gen Z have never grown up without dating apps. I have no idea what life is like with dating apps because I never experienced that before. But what is the relationship like for Gen Zers when it comes to that?
Great to see you both. We talk a lot about how Gen Zers are digital natives. So when it comes to relationships, this is no different. As you mentioned, this year marks a decade since Gen Zers have known the world of dating apps, and therefore we can't talk about Gen Z relationships without thinking about them. And contrary to what you would think, Gen Z actually is majorly frustrated by dating apps. 90% of them are frustrated, which is why it's so important to have these conversations that center young people at the table, which is why we decided to host our first episode of our Gen Z talk show, POVs, all about relationships and how they most directly impact Gen Z. And it's coming out this coming Tuesday, March 28th.
Cool.
Dating apps have changed so much just in the last decade, from when 10 years ago I was 23 and I think of what Tinder was when it came out versus what it is now. It's always evolving, but you also had the pandemic sandwiched in between all of this for Gen Zers. Has that changed the way that they're dating?
I think the pandemic has impacted the way that all of us interact with the people around us. And for most Gen Zers, they only know dating in a pandemic world. And on our episode, we heard from a lot of our guests that they struggle with communication when it comes to dating, which is why it's so important to convene spaces where we can have these face-to-face conversations to hopefully encourage young people to have more of them when it comes to dating.
You know, Gen Z places a lot of importance on authenticity, whether we're talking about sexuality. I think 1 in 5 Gen Z adults identify as LGBTQ or cultural background. How does that play into romantic lives?
Absolutely. I think every Gen Zer defines themselves and the way they approach relationships differently. So when talking about dating and when thinking about how Gen Zers approach relationships, we have to think of them as individuals. And I think just as much as you would show up to any aspect of your life as your whole self, Gen Zers want to do the same. And no matter what, this is a topic impacting this entire generation.
Let's talk about types of relationships they're having, because a lot of people seem to be wanting to define relationships with their partner, be that ethically non-monogamous or quote-unquote situationships. How are Gen Zers looking at what I guess society would have called traditional long-term monogamous partnerships in the past? Are they interested in that?
Every Gen Zer would DTR, define their relationship a little bit differently. And like you said, Ellison, every Gen Zer tends to reject traditional labels and therefore are abandoning some of these traditions of the past, including these relationship paths. And the conversations we've had on the show explored topics topics of non-monogamy, open relationships, and for the most part, it's something on every young person's mind, and it's definitely something we need to be talking about more. But every young person defines their own relationship style and interest differently.
We have like 15 seconds here, but what's the #1 frustration Gen Zers have with dating apps?
Oh, I think dating apps have killed some of the romance that young people, I think, crave, especially as we return to a normal world, which is why we framed our episode around the question, have dating apps ruined dating? And that comes with a host of other issues, whether it be hookup culture, ghosting, and exploring how young people all approach it in their own way.
All right, Sophie Barron, thank you so much. Appreciate it. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.